Everyone, and thank you for joining us for this public presentation and Q&A session regarding Arbor Haven's proposal to develop a former country club of Woodbridge. As you know, the town purchased this property in 2009 for $6.9 million in order to control its destiny. We will continue to pay an average of $387,000 yearly until 2032 to pay down our debt on the property. There have been 3 attempts in the past to develop the property into housing. Our town currently has mostly large one-family homes, and in the most recent revaluation, generally speaking, our large homes lost or maintained value, and the smaller homes and multifamily homes gained value. Smaller homes and affordable homes, which are part of Arbor Haven's plan, would allow seniors to downsize and stay in town, and also allow young families to buy starter homes and stay in town. The only way we can lower taxes is to encourage growth to our grand list of both homes and businesses, and more people will attract more shops and restaurants in our commercial district. As a reminder, the town can only sell or purchase property with a vote of the townspeople. The Board of Selectmen voted to hold this public information session tonight to allow residents a chance to learn more and to give feedback on the idea. Arbor Haven is also visiting boards and commissions to discuss the proposal with them. If the Board of Selectmen decides to move forward with this proposal, there will be at least one more public information session to answer questions before the question is taken to the voters at referendum. Following tonight's presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions, and I ask that you please hold your questions until the end of the presentation. I anticipate a lot of questions this evening, so I will limit each person to 2 minutes to allow everyone an opportunity to speak. In order to ask a question, if you're on a computer, laptop, tablet, or smartphone, you can push the hand button to raise your hand. That will put you in the queue to ask a question. Once your question has been asked, please push the button again to get out of the line. All pre-submitted questions that were sent in to Mrs. Shaw will be read and answered by the developers. Thank you very much. And with that, I will turn it over to Arbor Haven, and I would ask everyone who is not speaking, please mute yourself. It'll cut down on the sound. And also, I would ask the Arbor Haven folks to introduce themselves before speaking. Thank you.
Would we enable sharing, please?
Yeah, who will be sharing their screen?
I will, Alexander.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. We are Arbor Haven Development. Harvey, would you like to lead off? It's on mute first.
My name is Harvey Shapiro. I'm a member of Arbor Haven Development. Arbor Haven has 2 partners, Alexander Corrales Shapiro and myself, and we're partnering with Joe Amico, who'll be speaking shortly for himself and on behalf of the project. I individually have over time developed about 2,000 residential units in the greater New York area. I'm a 2nd-generation Connecticut developer. The market value at the time of the development of those 2,000 units, then current, was about $250 million. And I'm very excited about working on this project in Woodbridge, and I'm hopeful that you all will give us permission to do that. Thank you.
My name is Alexander KS, and my background is actually first in affordable housing and construction, then real estate finance, and I'm leading up the project management side of the team. Joe?
Good evening. My name is Joe Amico. I am an ex-banker. I'm still an attorney. I've been involved in real estate for somewhere on order of 15, 20 years. Number of different projects, multifamily housing in New York City, large projects on the West Coast involving several phases, several years, and several hundred millions of dollars. Multifamily project in Colorado. I was asked by Alex and Harvey to come lend a hand on this one. And I got to say, it's a nice project. It's got a lot of good characteristics for the town of Woodbridge. So why don't we spend maybe 10 minutes going over the proposal in some broad detail, so everybody has some orientation, and then we'll throw the doors open and everybody can ask all the questions they want. Alex, maybe go to the, yep, perfect. That's the satellite photo. The town's former golf course. As you can see, what we are showing here is the golf course from an aerial photo, satellite probably. And part of our proposal is to keep a fairly substantial amount of open space and include a lot of walking paths and bike trails. Alex and I spent hours walking this property, trying to get a feel for it. It's really a beautiful piece of property. You can see that it was a golf course. The trees have matured over 70, 80 years. There's tremendous variety in the trees. You have oaks, you have shagbark hickories, you've got, I found northern pecans in there, obviously maples and elms and other stuff, but firs, balsams. It's really a very pretty place. And as we were walking it, Alex and I kind of came to the conclusion, you know, this is not some place that you do a standard development. So we kind of switched our gears and focused on doing something that would maintain the beauty of the property, but at the same time, allow people to have a good home to live in. So that's how we've approached this thing. We spoke a lot with people in the town, trying to get a feel for what are the considerations and concerns of the various constituencies, preservation of open space, impact on the school system. There's an affordable housing issue out there. You know, there's a bunch of different constituencies, and what we tried to do is we tried to balance all of those considerations and concerns, keeping the public's interests in mind, not necessarily ours. We kind of put the public first on this one. The approach was to take all of the constituencies into consideration, not to privilege any one of them. So you'll find that it's not all open space, but we're not prejudicing anybody. So there is open space. There was a concern about affordable housing. It's not all affordable housing. So, but there is some. So it's this balancing of nobody's privileged, nobody's prejudiced, something for everybody, nobody everything. So let's talk a little bit about the general layout of the site and how we've put the homes together here. One of the considerations of the constituencies in the town was that they wanted to preserve the character of the town. And what we did was we took the parts of the parcel that abut Johnson and Ansonia, and we stuck with the town's residential A zoning, which is the acre and a half baseline zoning for Woodbridge. And we use that for the outer perimeter of the property on Johnson and Ansonia. And you can see from this, what Alex has put up is the purple area is where the residential A zoning would go. You can see on the Johnson Road side, which is the vertical side to the left, we laid out a couple of lots. Yes, it's not the scale, but it's for purposes of showing how it would lay out. We're taking the approach of front and back lots. And what we're doing on both Johnson and Ansonia is we're reducing the number of curb cuts by doubling up the driveways. Both side to side and front and back. So you'd have essentially a fourplex of lots, one driveway for them, servicing those 4 homes. And you end up on Johnson, you have maybe, all right, Alex has brought up, here's 4 lots, 1 driveway coming in, and 4 houses with their own drives coming up to the houses. Let's rotate back to the overview slide. The purpose of using that fourplex is to reduce the number of curb cuts. So I think on the Johnson side, we have, I don't remember exactly, 4 or 5 driveways. And it's pretty much the same thing over on Ansonia. Maybe one less on Ansonia because of the park up in the corner there. The concept there is to kind of diffuse some of the traffic. You don't want to have one entrance for a bunch of houses. This way, things are spread out a little bit, and also it lends to the character of the larger home on a 1.5 acre lot. Here's a satellite view of what we've just described. The larger lots abutting Johnson. And then we threw some of the smaller 1/3 of an acre lots that we would suggest for the interior of the property. Let's rotate back to the colored slide, if you would. All right. The project involves a total of 145 homes. 35 of them would be the large homes on the purple area. Then there would be 110 homes on the interior, which would generally follow the town's residential B zoning, which is a 15,000 square foot lot. And we were proposing of those 110 residential B lots that about 73, am I correct? 73 of them would be age restricted. And the balance of 37 would be market rate homes. There's also included in those numbers 22 affordable homes. So of the 110 homes which are in the green and kind of yellow area, there are mixed in there, encompassed in the 110 are 22 affordable homes. There's, as I said, there's a lot of constituencies and interests that have to be balanced. And one of the reasons that we went this way is because the affordable homes can be mixed in with the other homes, and really nobody knows that they're affordable unless you live in it, of course. The age restricted homes, there are, I think 62 of them would be market rate, 11 of them would be affordable. Age restricted means that they would have a deed restriction stating that at least one resident would have to be over 55, and it could be nobody under 18 as a permanent resident in the home. Couple of reasons for that. One is that obviously there's a market for those homes. I don't know if anybody has driven over to Fieldstone in Orange. Frankly, I think it's a pretty ugly development, but that's just an opinion. We would intend to do something a lot nicer than that. But those things sell like crazy because there's a demand for it. People want those things. So we said, well, we'll do some of those. But then we looked at another consideration is the impact on your school system. Your teachers and administrators have done a fantastic job of running a top class school system. I think you're like in the top 5 in the state or something, which I know the kids that get turned out are stellar. And the last thing you want to do is mess up somebody's good job. One of the considerations is the impact on your school system of putting a lot of new homes into the Woodbridge community. One way that we mitigated that was through the senior homes, because there's a benefit and burden to any school system when you put up a home. The benefit is obviously the homeowner pays taxes. The burden is that there's more kids in the school system. Using the senior homes as part of the mix, what we did was we created the benefit for the town of the tax revenues from these senior homes. And as you can see from what Alex has put up here, they're not, they taint cheap. Let's just put it that way. The town gets the benefit of the tax revenues, but because of the age restrictions on the residents there, you're not going to have school-age children plowing into the schools. So you have the benefit of the tax revenue. You don't have the burden of the kids going into the school system. There's Alex has some numbers here for you to look at. We did some research into how many kids on average per household, et cetera. I understand Dr. Budd is with us tonight. He can probably give you a lot more detail about this stuff than I can. That's his bailiwick, not mine. Let's go back to the perfect, Alex. You see, this guy reads my mind. Part of the project is, as I mentioned, open space, and then there's some public amenities. The open space is going to cover well over 50 acres of the parcel. We're going to be using a lot less than that, than the 155 acres out there to put the homes in there. That's one of the advantages of using the residential B zoning, is that you can make it a little more dense, but still maintain some of the park-like atmosphere. The piece down at the bottom where it says pool, that piece, which is the piece that runs behind Woodfield Road, there's a bunch of homes down there where it dovetails into Johnson. That piece of the property is within the watershed and can't be built on. I think it's used as a sledding hill. I've been up there. If you're at the old clubhouse and you look down, you see down the hillside. It's really very, very pretty. And personally, I'm glad it's in the watershed. We can't build on it because it would be a shame to ruin that. Some of the other things that we are proposing are take the existing volleyball court, which I see people are still using, so good for them. The tennis courts look like they need some TLC, so we'll redeem and upgrade all the tennis courts and volleyball courts. We had a discussion with the Parks and Recreation people the other day. Town doesn't have a full court basketball court. I think you should, so we're going to put that in there. The pool is probably a lost cause, so we'll build a new pool. The clubhouse, I don't think has a life left to it. We would probably utilize it as a staging area during construction for materials and assembly and supplies and things like that. At the end, though, we would probably demolish it and build a new clubhouse more in line with the use for the pool. It wouldn't be elaborate with a ballroom or anything like that. It would be more like you've got some dressing rooms, you've got some bathrooms, you probably have a snack bar, you probably have an office, etc. That type of thing. We would have up on the corner, up at the top, at the corner of Johnson and Ansonia, playground for the kids. The concept there also is to have the school bus pull in there so that the parents could, there'll be some parking, the parents could go and drop off the kids, and it makes it easy for the schools because there's one spot to pick up and drop off kids going into the schools from this project. Within the project itself, you'll see some green lines running through there. Those green lines represent bike trails and walking paths. We did the math, it's probably about 2.5 miles total. Because if you see the bike path goes all the way around the outside, then you have 2 major crossing paths running the width of the property, and then you have 3 vertical paths running up and down the property. The paths on the interior of the property, if you'll notice, and if anybody's walked the property, you've seen this. The fairways were separated by tree lines. A couple of the fairways are separated by double width tree lines. And when we were walking, we noticed that the double width tree lines are perfect for a bike path because miraculously the trees are spaced equally apart and there's a space right up the middle and it's perfect for putting a bike path in there. So that's the concept for creating the bike paths. The bike paths are, it's interesting concept we came up with. We are putting them on at the backs of some of the homes, of some of the lots, so that technically 10 feet of the lot is subject to an easement for public use for the bike path. But it would still be private property. However, the homeowner could not obstruct the bike path and the usual stuff like that. The maintenance for the bike path would be picked up by what we call the Homeowners Light Association. We don't believe in homeowners associations, which are in your living room and telling you what to do. This is basically one where everybody pays $25 a month for the maintenance of the bike paths and contributes to a fund for the maintenance of the roads. The roads inside the development would be private property. They would not be dedicated to the town. The cost for maintenance and snowplow, et cetera, would be borne by the homeowners.
Joe, can I ask
the
clarify,
association.
the roads, people would still have access to this. People could, it wouldn't be private so that the townspeople could not get into the roads. Is that correct?
Yes, they are open public access roads by deed. However, the ownership of the roads is on private land. So the town would not and could not bear the burden of maintaining and snow plowing and the other stuff that has to be done. Because the bike paths are running through the property and the locations of the bike paths are subject to the restrictive easement, preventing people from chopping down the trees if they wanted and messing with the beauty of the land. What we de facto do is create another 12 to 15 acres of open space within the property, which will stay there forever. There was storm drains. You want to tell them about storm now?
Sure. So we want to talk a bit about combination of the design as well as the effect that this project will have on the creek, which is to the west of the site. One of the issues right now is that you've got stormwater running right down the hills, and that leads to the creek filling up. And as a result of that, putting our project in with the storm drains, we'd actually very much reduce the outflow into the creek, and eventually lead to the town having a better way of dealing with stormwater. As you know, the rain's been increasing over the past few years. They're projected to increase more for Connecticut. So the addition of storm drains throughout the property would actually very, very seriously decrease the amount of water going into the creek. Additionally, the one thing which we wanted to talk about here was the designs which we'll be using for. Excuse me, let's switch the slide here. One of the key components of the project is it's not going to be a cookie cutter project. These are some sample designs. These are by no means the actual houses, but the idea is that we want to stay within the concept of Woodbridge, which is not all the same homes. It's not cookie cutter. There's the exterior homes; those will all be custom homes. And then what we will also have is we'll have some versions of multifamily. One version would be a ranch style home. That's likely going to be inside of the age-restricted community, and that would be in groups of 4. Right now, this rendering is only of 2, but we would set it up as 4. What we considered putting them back to back, but we're still evaluating various routes. The other one would be a townhouse style, as you can see on the bottom right-hand corner. We think that people need to have a range of opportunities for housing, and this would allow that. And what we also we're very focused on as I take a look at these streets, is we wanted the streets to not appear as single long roads that sort of have no end and separate the community. By having shorter roads with more paths between them, it's actually easier to walk through. It's easier for people to feel comfortable on their streets and to feel connected to their neighbors. That's a very key component of our development. We don't want to have just one entrance and you go down this long path and disappear. This is intended to join the community together.
Alex, do we have a slide that shows the major ingress and egress points?
Sure.
So
this one might show it the best.
All right, that's good.
go
Yeah. All right.
Please go ahead.
So traffic obviously is always a concern. What we try to do is not have one entrance to the property. Somebody had sent me a copy of the Toll Brother proposal a couple of years back, and they had one road coming in off of Ansonia for 100 and something units, and it was like this is a logistical nightmare. So that was one of the reasons we put the curb cuts for the large houses along Johnson and Ansonia. That diffuses some of the traffic. We have 3 major entrances to the interior of the property. 2 of them are on Woodfield. One is down by where it's near the tennis courts. If you know where that cell phone tower is, if you look closely, you can see there's an old service road, I guess. Our proposal is we would take that and spruce it up and do some plantings and make it look nice. And that would be an entrance to one section of the property. The other entrance would be in the vicinity of where the clubhouse is now. And that would allow access to both the age restriction and the market rate homes, or the family homes, if you want to call them that. There would be another secondary type of access point over on Johnson, near Fairview, right where the old snacks stand was when the golf course was there. And that would be that would be more for school bus drop off and stuff. We're anticipating most of the people, unless they're going to someplace in town, would largely be using the entrances and exits on Woodfield. So yes, Woodfield would have an impact from traffic. We anticipate that the impact to Johnson and Ansonia would be relatively minimal compared to what you would see on Woodfield. So that was our thinking on traffic management, if you want to call it that. All right. Anything I missed, Alex?
I think that's it for now. I think we should open for questions.
All right.
If someone knows how to control this from here, I'm unaware of how to do this part.
I've got it. We've got 3 people in line currently for questions. The first one is Ryan Mills. Ryan, you've been unmuted. Go ahead and state your question.
Thank you. This is Dr. Ryan Mills, 1189 Johnson Road in Woodbridge. And first, I want to speak out against this proposal, mainly for its impact on the children, the kids of Woodbridge. And I have some questions for the developers. All throughout the pandemic, my elementary school age kids and I have been hiking the property, and I appreciate that the developers have walked it and I've noticed what's there. And they will have noticed the acres of milkweed and the native species of monarchs and bluebirds and kestrels, things that our kids are studying at our wonderful elementary school, exactly those things. So first, I'd be interested in how the developers would ameliorate harm and habitat loss for these native species, which, as a kid, I never saw, but which are coming back. And I feel this takes us backwards to the bad old days environmentally. Secondly, I note your playground slash dog park is on a busy state highway corner in a probably contaminated site of an old building. Who would be responsible for the cleanup of that? And would the developers guarantee that that would be a safe place for children to be playing on a possible old brownfield there? Third and final question, our kids are packed in at Beecher Road School. All our kids are in maximum size classrooms with everything taken out except for desks. At some point, if this development were to go through, there's going to need to be enlargement or construction at Beecher Road School of a new wing or a new building. Would the expenses of new school construction be contributed to by Arbor Haven, or would that only be on Woodbridge taxpayers? So I really think for the health and well-being of our kids and of our health of our town budget, we would reject this proposal. And those are my questions. Thank you.
Well, how about I deal with the questions in reverse order? With regard to the school, Dr. Budd is with us tonight, and I think he'll come on in a little bit and address the school issue. So it's not that I'm avoiding it, and we've certainly looked at that issue. One of our goals here was to create a project which, as I said, gives a benefit to the school district from taxes without creating a huge burden. And we largely accomplished that goal through the senior housing. But Dr. Budd will tell you more about that. He knows the details. That's not our strength. With regard to safe areas for kids, I can't think of a higher priority that exists in this universe than the safety of our children. And it's absolutely certain that it's guaranteed that everything will be pristine when we're done. And I can't put it more bluntly than that. With regard to the preservation of the species, etc., I probably failed to mention this. Our intention is not to cut down a single tree on this property. If you'll notice, what we've done with our plan here is we've put all the roads and the building lots, etc., down the fairways, and we've kept all of the trees. As I mentioned, walk the property just like you do, Doctor, and it's beautiful. And to the extent that we can provide homes for people that they want to move into, and at the same time preserve the really bucolic nature of the property, we're going to do that. And that's how I can answer your questions.
Next up, we have Nancy Clark. I'll unmute you in just one moment, but Dr. Mills, if you could please unraise your hand, that would take you out of line. Nancy, you've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yeah, hi, thank you. I do not want this property developed at all. And the idea of developing it was actually already voted down 2-1 in the past, as I remember. And I think the cost of carrying this property is only like $50 a person every year, or 40 to 50. I'm not sure. I asked a question to Jerry Shaw about that, but and that just doesn't seem like very much money to have such a beautiful piece of property. This property is where the bobcat, the red fox, the coyotes live. The monarch butterflies lay their eggs on the milkweed, which is all over the property right now. And if all that's gone, the bobcat, the monarchs, they're going to die, when their food and their homes are destroyed. So, and also, this is a crucial spot for migrating birds. So we just can't disturb this property. That's how I feel.
I just want to answer, this is Tony Genovese, I'm the finance director. I just want to answer your question on the per capita cost. So in the current fiscal year, the debt service is $430,000. And then there's insurance costs for the facility, for the building and for the property. And I'd say it's approximately $45 in the current budget per capita.
The next person in line with a question is Dr. Lober. Dr. Lober, you've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, this is for the Arbor Haven developers. When the Woodbridge Country Club became insolvent in 2008, when half the membership resigned, a member who was a developer picked up the note on the property with the intent of building a large residential development. First Selectman Ed Sheehy asked the town to vote to buy the property to protect it, which they overwhelmingly agreed to, explaining that the cost of education significantly outweighed the taxes generated. After his untimely death, the golf course operation was not renewed, and over the years, multiple developers have made proposals to buy portions of the property for residential development. Each one has either been rejected by referendum or engendered so much popular opposition that the offers were withdrawn. The present proposal suggests the revenue raised will exceed the cost, which they quantify as originally was $12,000 in the presentation they made to the Board of Selectmen. Now it's a more realistic $17,500 per student, largely ignoring the fact that Beecher Road School is now at capacity, and a large infusion of new students will require building a new wing at a cost of some estimate of $10 million. It also ignores the $20,000 per student that Woodbridge is charged by Amity. So my question is this: why should the taxpayers of Woodbridge sell this property to you when the cost will exceed the revenue generated?
I think Dr. Budd is better qualified to answer that. We looked at this and we came out with a number of 17,500 per student because there is a state contribution made to the school system. So even though the budget says 20,000, some of that is defrayed at some point. At least that was what I was told by Dr. Hewitt. So I'm just repeating what I know. And with respect to the number of students that actually end up in the school system, we did some research. The average number of kids per household now is less than 2. There's only 70 houses in this development, 72, that would allow families with kids. But the more important number is the average number of school-age kids, which is less than 1 per household. So we made a calculation. We came out that there's actually a net benefit to the town, but that's not for us to debate. That is largely for the school board to address. We're in the business of building homes that people want to move into and creating a project which the town of Woodbridge can be proud of. Yes, impact on schools is certainly an issue. We think it's not as drastic as some people claim, but it's difference of opinion. So that's the answer that I know for that question.
Next in line with the question is Michael Broderick. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
So I was at the original meeting when the town voted to buy the property. And this kind of development was exactly the kind of development people did not want in town, because it isn't like anything else in town. It is much more dense. And as I read the proposal, it even puts in things that are not allowed in that area. For instance, on page 15, you talk about having a tasteful retail coffee shop, food market. That's commercial. That zone would not allow commercial development. So are you also looking for zoning changes to allow commercial on that piece of property? The other question I have is, what town in Connecticut that owns open space has taken open space and sold it to a developer for development? Name me one in Connecticut that's done that. And thirdly, and the reason, by the way, that doesn't occur is because if land, I was on planning and zoning in the past, if land is undeveloped, it has much less impact on the town coffers than land that's developed. No children, no fire, no police, etc. Because you're only calculating the children. You're not building in all the extra police, fire, paramedics, etc. for senior housing, which would be necessary and need to be used more by a senior population. So as Dr. Lober just said, this project, because I totally disagree with your calculation of the children, is a net loss to taxpayers. And the other thing is, the amount of damage to the environment, as previous people, where we have already, you probably heard today, we have so many species becoming more and more endangered. And this is the kind of property that actually helps preserve those. And there's no mitigation of that in your plan. So I'd like you to answer those questions for me.
Simple answer to your first question is there's no zoning change sought. The inclusion of the business about some commercial thing was a discussion that occurred early on and for whatever reason was not deleted from the presentation. Your second question about some town that sold something, I don't know the answer to that. And the third question about preservation of open space is we've done the best job we could with the circumstances.
Just a little bit of housekeeping. If you've already spoken, please unraise your hand to get out of line. Next up is Javier Aviles. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hey, good evening. My question had to do with the slide that presents the net benefit to the town. I was wondering why the number of affordable homes listed in the top left doesn't match the affordable homes tally near the middle of the slide. I noticed that in the middle of the slide it shows 11 versus the 22 in the upper left. Could you help me understand that? Thank you.
Yeah, the simple answer to that is that some of the elderly also need to have affordable homes. They're not the only ones struggling economically. Everyone should have a place to live, and some of them will be for the age-restricted homes. Some of them will, so those will not have school-age children.
There is 22 affordable homes. As I mentioned, 35 of the homes are residential A, which is the acre-and-a-half zoning. The other 110 are on third of an acre lots. Of the 110, by the town's own zoning regulation, 20% of those have to be affordable. And what we did is we took half the affordable and put it in the family section, and we took the other half of the affordable and put it into the senior section. So when you're talking about that 11 that appears on that chart there, that 11 is the 11 that's in the family section, which would have kids. So that's why there's school-age children next to those. There's another 11 affordable homes which are in the senior section, which don't have kids. So of course they wouldn't show up on the burden side of the equation, meaning that there's school-age kids that have to be taken care of. So that's the answer.
Next up, we have Chuck Pine. Chuck, you've been unmuted. Go ahead, please.
Chuck, you may have your mic on mute.
Chuck, you just remuted yourself. Try again. There you go. We're having difficulty hearing you. If you want to try typing your comment into the Q&A, I can read it for you. I'm going to remute you. We do have one question that's been submitted in writing from Stephen Francis. He says, thank you for your presentation. A few questions. One, would the proposed homes be sewer or septic and well or city water? One of the projects you referenced in the provided materials is a 50-acre project in Cromwell, where sale of 15 units per year over 5 years is projected. How does this project differ from the proposed Woodbridge property, where sale of 145 units over 24 to 36 months is projected? Lastly, will these homes be built spec or against purchase contracts? Thank you.
I've spoken to the utilities. The property has sewer service at the moment. It comes down by the clubhouse off of Woodfield, and the water utility has their main right across the street and will run a main into the property. I think they bring it under Ansonia. The marketing plan, there's different marketing plans for different sections of this project. The senior homes will sell faster than one per month. I can guarantee you that. There's a large demand for those. The affordable units are probably sold as I speak because everybody wants those. The smaller homes are going to be very attractive and in a very attractive environment. I would suspect they will sell very well. The larger homes naturally will take time to absorb. And we're, of the 35 large homes, we're projecting one per month, which is 36 months roughly. So that's the answer to that question.
Next up.
I'm sorry. Somebody wanted to know, is a contract or a spec? The answer is both. The smaller homes get built as a block. The larger homes are done largely on contract.
Next up, we have Amy Morella. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. Actually, first of all, I'd like to follow up on something Steve Francis asked. I don't believe you answered it, which is the question of how much of this development would be sewered and how much would be septic in which areas. To follow up with that, there's a question of what the source of the water for potable water, whether it's being provided by the Regional Water Authority or it would be wells. And related to that question, you represented that the storm water would be reduced because you're going to use storm drains. That, with respect to that, how have you gauged the increased impact of storm water from impermeability, from building everything from the houses themselves to the driveways, et cetera? Because that increases stormwater load usually on the environment. You're reducing permeable surface. And where are you proposing that the stormwater goes if it doesn't go down to the storm, down to the creek? I really don't understand how you calculated that there would be less stormwater. So if you could address those three related issues about the geography, I'd appreciate it. One last also comment. You indicated that the roads would be owned by the association, so there would be no maintenance requirements for the town. You may not be familiar with this, but somebody else in the past proposed that for development, and guess what? Over time, they basically abandoned the roads to the town, and the town ended up with the cost of maintenance, not only snow plowing, but also over time, the burden of maintaining the roads. So if you can perhaps investigate that and explain to us at a future date how you think your project would be different, that would be helpful to understand.
Let's first, our roads would be built out of permeable materials as opposed to impermeable materials. Same with the bike paths. permeable as opposed to impermeable, um, trying to mitigate the issue of water runoff. With respect to water and sewer, the entire property would be serviced by the water main from the public utility, and the entire property would be serviced by sewer from the public utility. What else was there that I missed? There was something.
The how the storm drains actually work, and where the sewer water and septic and source of the water.
Yeah, good, Alex. I'm punting. It's your problem.
Please go ahead.
I don't know the answer to that, so I'm
sorry.
not even going to try.
Regarding the storm drains, generally the way they're constructed is you put them underneath the roadway. You put them underneath the yards. They end up being long trenches that corral the water, and if there is outflow, it would head over to, I believe, either the little pond on the northeast of the site, and if not there, then over to back to the creek the way it would have been anyway. But as a result of there'd be storm drain taking any of it, it would be a reduction. When you combine the storm drain and the non-permeable surfaces, the design will have a net loss. That's the calculation that we're aiming, which we expect to be no problem.
I would disagree with you, Alex. I don't know that there's a net loss to rainwater. It is what it is. But let's table that one and come back, because I don't think we know the answer to it right now. How's that?
Okay.
All right. Next question.
We have two written questions, and I'll ask if you've had a chance to speak, please unraise your hand. The first written question is from Thomas Wheel. If anyone in Woodbridge supports the development, it is only because there is an expectation of at least $900,000 a year net benefits forever. That is the expected deal. If that much money isn't realized, the people of Woodbridge will not get the bargain they expect. What form of guarantees will the developer put up that will assure that the town gets the net revenues that have been projected? Will there be corporate and personal guarantees of letters of credit? What security will be provided?
The answer is none whatsoever, because you're talking about tax revenues and town budgets, neither of which are under our control.
The next question comes from Chuck Pine, and he writes, have you had conversations with the police as to what they believe will be needed to match the department size with this increased population? RE Fire Department, will any of the homes require the acquisition of additional equipment to handle buildings higher than what they are equipped to support now?
The answer to that question is no, we have not had discussions at this point with either the police department or the fire department or the EMTs.
There are currently no new, excuse me, there's one more question. Jenny Krause writes, please explain about the bus staging at Ansonia and Johnson.
That is a work in progress. The concept there is that there is going to be space for the school bus to pull in and space for the parents to pick up the kids. More than that, at this point, it's hard for me to say.
The next person in line with a question is Barbara Fabiani. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Can you hear me, Betsy?
Yes, thank you.
Very good. I have several questions. Could you talk more about the permeable materials of the bike paths and roadways? Generally, to keep a material permeable, they need to be maintained, to remove the sand or whatever else it is to collect. So if you could talk about that again a little bit. I too had questions about the stormwater. Once you collect it, where does it go? Are you doing underground retention systems? So that's certainly something we'll all be interested in knowing about. Um, what square footage do you anticipate for the different types of houses you're planning? Are photovoltaics an option? Are you considering net zero for any of these properties? Could you talk a little bit about site lighting and dark skies? And what percentage of the open space that you're returning to the town is between 15 and Woodfield? Thank you.
Okay. Um, let's open space. I think the number is somewhere around 50 to 55 acres of dedicated open space, largely in the trees along Woodfield and around below the pool along Johnson. Um, and I think there's also a parcel on the other side of Woodfield that abuts the Wilbur-Cross. Yeah, there you go. So there's the, and yeah, again, also there's de facto some open space caused by the creation of the bike paths with restrictive easements on doing anything to that.
Quick guess,
Permeability.
I'd say a third, maybe a little less when lets you count the bike trails and the walking paths. I'd say about a third.
We have 150 acres and something around 50 acres is right there. Plus there's another de facto 10 or 12 in the property because of the bike trails, etc. But yeah, people can argue over that number. Permeability. We're using actually a very ancient technique that the Romans have used for centuries. It's basically large gravel, small gravel, and then you put item 4 on top of it with a binder. And it's very easy. It's extremely durable, first of all. Very easy to maintain, extremely cost effective, and does not contain any petrochemicals. So that is, and that's used for both roads and bike paths. In different variations, of course. I mean, roads serve a different purpose than a bike path, but concepts are the same. As to solar cells, photovoltaics, things like that, yes, we're 100% supporters of those things. To the extent that we can orient the houses, that's your key with these things, is to orient your access on your roof line so that you can put photovoltaics there, which will actually capture the sun in an efficient manner. You know, having photovoltaic cells facing to the north are completely useless. So, you know, you have to take them one at a time, and some may have it and some may not have it. And that's just a function of Mother Nature.
To speak a bit more to that, we plan on using heat pumps for heating and cooling, which are very efficient systems. And they take very little power to get them to work. It's going to be absolutely a priority to make this stuff as energy efficient, as green as possible. I'm definitely very strongly in the boat with that. I completely agree. We will be looking into every single way we can bring some more power and efficiency out of the site.
And I can vouch for what Alex has said there. He's obsessed with this
What?
stuff, but it's a good obsession. Okay, our next question, I guess.
The next person in line with a question is Whitney Randall. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, great. I wasn't present at the start of your presentation, so I apologize if you've already answered this, but I was just curious how long you anticipate it would take to complete construction of all the homes from start to finish. Also taking into account the current issues with the supply chain and building materials and skilled workers. And also, which homes would you start with in terms of, increasing revenue and things like that? Thank you.
We anticipate the project would take about 36 months to complete. As somebody else asked the question about how do you time these things? It depends upon which section you're talking about. The affordable stuff can go up pretty quickly. At the other end of the spectrum, the larger homes, which would largely be done on contract, will take a lot longer. And the stuff in between, the senior homes and the family homes, those are going to go at a pretty good pace, I think. That's largely a function of interest rates now. It's do the math. Somebody has a $500,000 loan and it's a 3% interest rate. It's $15,000 a year. It's $1,250 a month for the interest charge. There's demand out there. Trust me. There's another part to the question about what was it? Help me, Alex. I'm failing here.
I think the question was which portion we would start with.
Well, some of it is we're going to start with all of it because really we are servicing 4 entirely different markets. We're servicing a market with large single-family homes on 1.5 acres, which are going to run over north of $1 million. We're servicing a separate market segment, which is senior homes. That has a lot of demand right now. So that would probably go really quick. The affordable stuff, as anybody can guess, there's huge demand and not enough supply. So that one would go very quickly. And the other stuff with the regular family homes, they get absorbed as they get absorbed, a couple of months. The supply chain, it's starting to, the problem is starting to ameliorate itself already. A prime stud or 2x4 for building or 2x6 for building was, $15, $18 a few months ago. It's back to $6 on a wholesale basis, and probably go to $5. Go to Home Depot. You can see for yourself. Handling that, dealing with the cost. Well, we just eat the cost. That's the way it goes.
Also, regarding the staging, we have considered putting some of the age-restricted homes near the regular family homes. Not everyone wants to be separated, so that there might be some. Essentially, those neighborhoods would blend into it, would sort of filter into another. You should end up building them all at the same time. It's what people want. We'll figure. We'll see how we'll respond to the market. No strong priority on our end.
The next question comes from Jenny Kraus, and she asks, will the walking paths and bike trail be available to all Woodbridge residents or only those living in the development? If open to all residents, where will they be able to park?
The answer is it's open to the general public, all residents and non-residents, by the way. The trails, per definition, by the restrictive easements, are open to any pedestrian. There would be parking, primarily 2 spots. You could use the parking up by the playground, and you could use the parking which is extant at the moment down by the clubhouse. Obviously, some of that needs to be fixed up, but clearly there's a ton of parking down there.
The next question comes from Jeff and Jen Hughes. They say they are opposed to this proposal. With our school at maximum occupancy, would a new school or addition to Beecher be built first?
I don't know the answer. I think Dr. Budd is better qualified. But any more questions?
Yes, our next question comes from Anna Galadnovsky, and she says, "How much traffic is expected on Woodfield Road? How was this calculated? Why should a resident on Woodfield Road be okay with increasing traffic?"
Um, I would think you wouldn't be okay with increased traffic. I mean, I've been down there in Woodfield and it's one car every half hour. So it's going to be a lot more than that. I can tell you that. Have we sat down and said, oh, you've got so many people living there and it's going to, yield so many dozens of cars per day? No, we haven't done that yet. It's kind of hard to do because of the diffuse nature of the approach we've taken. That's also a function of where are people going to go. My instinct tells me a lot of the traffic is going to go north on Woodfield up to Ansonia, because if they're going either up to the center of town or going over to shop, that's the way they're going to go. If they're, some people may want to go into New Haven and find cutting down to Johnson and going across the Wilbur Cross that way is the better. But I think most of it is going to go north up on Woodfield towards Ansonia. Again, that's an opinion. We haven't anybody come and do a study yet.
The next resident with their hand up is Felicia Lober. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I have a comment and a question. One had to do with the slide on the substantial contributions to the town's budget. I have a printout that showed different numbers than what you showed, and that had to do with the children. The slide I think that I saw tonight had 1.15 children in the large lots and homes, the medium homes, and the affordable homes. And I think you said earlier that you had rethought those numbers and had downgraded them. But I don't, just on my street alone, this is just my comment, just on my street alone, the young families, that a lot of young families move in, they all have 2 and 3 children. So that was just a comment. The other question that I had was, had to do, someone asked earlier about the square footage for each home, and I don't know if that was actually answered. I might have missed it.
You are correct. I did not answer the question about the square footage of the homes. Larger homes, 4 bedrooms, 4,000 square feet plus. 3-bedroom homes, 3,000 square feet. 2-bedroom homes, 2,000 square feet. Those are generalized rough numbers. Specific model will vary, obviously. Coming back to your comment about the table that we had, we did a very early sketch, if you will, of the cost per student and averages per household, et cetera. Then we did some research. We were probably low on the cost per student, but we were probably high on the number of school-age children. And that's the question. School-age children on average per household. And you have to recall that some families will move in, will have school-age kids, college-age kids. Some families will move in with no kids. Some will move in with one. We don't know the answer to how many kids. And I think nobody does. What we're trying to do is trying to get a generalized number on that issue. But again, really, that's the school board is the experts on this. And I think that's really who you should be looking to for an answer on that.
The next question comes from Bob Hill, and he writes, "What % of the total project will be financed outside of those that are looking to purchase the property? And do you have an initial term sheet from a lender?" Also, how large will the clubhouse be, and who will handle the public pool operation and maintenance of the tennis courts, volleyball, and basketball court?
The pool house will not be some 22,000 square foot monstrosity like is there now. It's going to be more in line with a pool house. So I would say a couple of thousand square feet, whatever you need for comfortably putting in locker rooms, showers, changing rooms, bathrooms, a couple of offices, snack stand, whatever the design calls for. So that's, yeah, I'm not anticipating that that's going to be monstrous. What was the other part of the question? Sorry.
Term sheet. Do we have we already received a term sheet?
I've been, I got a lot of people want to finance this. I'll put it that way. I'm not going to give you term sheets at this point. I can finance the whole thing tomorrow. I can tell you that.
The next question comes from Stephen Francis, who writes, does the property presently have environmental contamination requiring remediation? If so, has the cost of remediation been estimated, and will it be required that this work be completed prior to sale?
We have not done a environmental impact review of the property. We did receive some a prior impact review, which had been done by the town. I don't remember how long ago it was. There's some things that have to be taken care of if they have not been taken care of. There may have been an oil tank out near the clubhouse and things like that. A lot of stuff like there might be lead paint on some of the old buildings. However, most of the old buildings would be demolished and removed. So to the extent there's any major environmental remediation, we'd have to cross that bridge when we get to it. Don't know the answer right now.
The next question comes from Patricia Kenyon. She writes, where will the sewage runoff from the development be processed? Has the land been surveyed for potential need for blasting for the placement of sewer lines?
Has not been surveyed for blasting. We anticipate that since the sewer lines will run up the fairways, as will the roads, there may, of course, anytime you're digging trenches, you're going to run into boulders and stuff like that. But because the property has already been laid out effectively for development along the fairways, we're not anticipating that, we're going to have weeks and weeks of blasting. I would say it would, if there is blasting, it would be more sporadic than anything else. As I mentioned before, the property is serviced by the sewer utility and also by the water utility. So water comes in from one utility and the sewer goes out to the other utility.
The next person in line with their hand raised is Daniel Cowan. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
So my question is for Alexander. You mentioned that you're going to be using highly efficient heat pump systems. And a heat pump has a coefficient of performance of 2.5 at 26 degrees. Just using my own oil bill of $2.59 and my own UI bill of 34 cents roughly for a blended rate, the cost difference between operating these units is roughly 6 times more expensive for the heat pump. So I'm wondering, 3 times more expensive. So I'm wondering who's going to be paying the additional utility costs for these highly efficient yet extremely expensive affordable housing.
All costs will be done by the tenant, not by the town, and that we'll figure that out. Running those sort of calculations will be handled as we're working on the project. We don't anticipate that cost being offloaded to anyone else. And if there are some issues with using one form versus another, and maybe some combination, just speaking generally, the plan is to make things as energy efficient as possible. Of course, there are some times when you cannot do it when you'd like to. There absolutely are issues, of course. We just can't answer that yet.
I would take issue with one word you used there, Alex, and that's
Sure.
tenant. There are no tenants. Everybody's a homeowner.
The next question comes, it's a written question from Thomas Will. The developer has presented a projection as to how this development is intended to proceed. This will be the premise on which any approval will be based. What recourse will the town have if the development does not proceed as presented? What rights of approval will the town have over any changes in the development? Will the developer be precluded from selling the land to any third party other than a purchaser of an individual residence?
We haven't crossed that bridge yet, so I really cannot answer that particular question. When we sit down to do let me go back, if we sit down to do a contract, that's when we deal with those issues.
The next question is a written question from Javier Aviles. Will the pool and the other amenities be available to all residents or just the owners of the new development?
Let's come back to that because I think I skipped part of somebody's question the last time around about the public amenities there, the pools, tennis courts, volleyball courts, etc. Those would be owned by the town and run by the town. And the concept here is we build them and then deed them over to the town, and the town owns them, runs them, maintains them. And they would be open to all members of the community. And the town would decide who can come and who can go. If they want to open it to the general public, that's your business, not ours. If you want to limit it to residents, your business, not ours.
The next written question comes from Bob Hill. What is your percentage investment into the deal as that gives a higher level of commitment versus 100% financing?
We're not going to talk about our finances at this point.
The next question comes from Daniel Cowan. He writes, can we hear from Dr. Budd if there is a need to build at the school if we have a 100 student influx?
It's for Dr. Budd, not for me.
Do you want me to speak at this point or to wait until the end of the Q&A? This is Jonathan.
Let's see if there's any more questions that fall on us, and once we sort of slog our way through those, then it's all yours.
Okay.
We have one more written question from Andrea Weinstein. She writes, Howard Rockland of 15 Cross Hollow Road would like to ask if geothermal heating and cooling is being considered.
Alex, you again.
Absolutely. Again, as someone just brought up the question, it depends on the cost efficient. I think it's great, but just because I think it's great doesn't mean it's cheap enough. So we're going to look into it and absolutely investigate, and I hope it works, because that would be a good thing to use. I just don't know the answer yet.
Yeah, I think, as with most things, the blended approach usually works best because you'll get some green, you get some cost savings, etc. Anyway.
It's possible because we're, developing all these together, as opposed to generally it's individual homes being put together. Since this is one large development, it's actually possible for geothermal to work. I've actually had conversations about that. Again, though, we still don't have numbers, but I would absolutely like to use it. I don't know if we will be able to, though.
The next person in line to ask a question is Amy Morella. You've been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to follow up on the discussion of what becomes town property. You mentioned the tennis courts and the volleyball courts, the pool house and the pool. What about the proposed walking/bike trails? Do those immediately become the responsibility of the town to maintain? The playground, the dog run, and the bus staging, are all those becoming public amenity or public property, basically? And I had previously asked, pointed out that in another development, private roads became public burden over time, and I did not get any response to that comment. I'm wondering what, if anything, you would say back to the fact that the town actually has a history of public roads being private roads basically being handed back over to the town for snow plowing and maintenance.
All right. I think Alex put up a slide for you. The large green area, that swath, if you will, that's largely deeded back to the town as public property. The bike paths, as we mentioned, are on private property. And they would be the responsibility of the homeowners association. We mentioned also that the roads that are in the development are on private property, and again would be the responsibility of the homeowners association. And if you're looking for me to tell you how it doesn't get back to the town, I don't know how that happens or doesn't happen. I don't know the answer to that.
This is Beth Heller. Can you hear me?
Yes.
First Selectman, good evening. I know that there were perhaps 10 or so questions that were submitted that were written, folks who could not make it tonight. And I know the developers have those. Perhaps we could switch to those now, if you don't mind reading them and answering them, please.
Betsy, were you reading the questions? Or
No, I've got, well, I have 3 different emails with the different scans. I think I'll do my best, and please let me know if I've skipped them. Let's start with Barbara Joyce Simpson. I would like to register opposition to the planned housing at the CCW by Arbor Haven Development for 2 reasons. 1, environmental impact. The property is a natural habitat, green open space, contains the headwaters of a pristine freshwater supply for wells across large swaths of Woodbridge. Property not suitable for housing as it is wet, rocky, and full of ledge. Blasting and diverting natural water flow in order to install utilities will do irreparable damage. 2, the price. Arbor Haven gives back the wetland as it is unusable and pay $90K per acre for prime Woodbridge land. On average, they would pay $62K per housing unit for land. What a deal when the rest of us pay so much more. Terrible proposal. I vote. Is there? I don't believe there's a question there. Well, go on next. Marguerite Dillaway. Hi, Jerry. Thank you so much for submitting these questions. These 2 are from Walden Dillaway. Question number 1. Opinions vary whether the number of affordable units in the plan is too many or too few. The question is, once the town has sold this property, what is the limiting factor, if any, on the number of affordable units that are actually built? Joe?
That would be part of the site plan when the contract is closed, if there is a contract.
Also speaking to that, the ruling on affordable is that it has to remain that way for 30 years, and cannot once it's been built, the deeds are non-transferable unless the person who is moving into it is also within the correct income bracket as was originally built. Question number 2. Several months ago, 275 townspeople had signed a petition supporting a plan to sell only the clubhouse area and set aside the rest of WCC as open space. Who can explain how this new 145 unit plan, which sets aside only a small fraction of the land as open space, namely the least accessible acres, has been given this special meeting at the expense of the earlier proposal, which set aside almost all the WCC land as open space, as does the New England Brewing Co. proposal. Who can explain why this is happening? Question. I can't speak to that.
This is Jerry Weiner. I'm the town attorney. I can just very quickly say that these we have this proposal that you've heard tonight, which is a proposal from a developer. It contains a purchase price. It contains the number of units. It contains the number of acres, and it's very specific. There's another proposal before the Board of Selectmen from a developer who proposes to erect a facility for New England Brewery and about 100 other rental units on the property. That also is a very specific, as a purchaser, has purchase price, has defines the use. The petition for the ordinance didn't have a purchaser, didn't have purchase price, and was really not specific, and the Board of Selectmen has not taken that up yet. If there is another purchaser, I believe the Board of Selectmen would be willing and anxious to hear from anyone who has specific proposals for the property. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. This is from Marguerite Dillaway. I have learned that Beecher Road School is already over capacity, and this 145 unit proposal would quickly flood both school systems with kids demanding an nth in addition to Beecher Road School costing 10 million or more, in addition to extra teachers and costs. So how can this proposal hope to reduce taxes in this town? I believe this is asked and answered, unless there's something else which we want to add here, Joe.
Actually, it's been asked, but we have not answered it because it is not our bailiwick. That is the purview of the school board. And I believe Dr. Budd, when we're finished with all the questions, will address the issue.
So asked, very important to be answered. Next comment, not really a question. This is from Jeff Hughes. Jeff and Jen Hughes, we both strongly object to both of these proposals, neither appealing nor financially sound. They absolutely have no benefit to Woodbridge. Okay. Next question. There are numerous, this is from Martha German. There are numerous sites on the country club property in need of extensive remediation. Will you pay for this work, or do you expect the town to bear the expense of over $800,000?
Again, we haven't done an environmental review, so don't know the answer to that at this point.
Okay, this is from Kathy Wick. Under the current zoning regulations, what is the maximum number of housing units that could be built on the 100-acre parcel that Arbor Haven proposes to purchase? That's a large.
Under the, assuming that you use 100 acres of the parcel as buildable space, I believe the current zoning allows you to construct multifamily housing with a density of 15 units per acre, which would be 1,500 units, of which 300 would have to be affordable. That's what the zoning regulations say.
So this is less. This is from Chris Keeble of 93 Center Road, Woodbridge. Please calculate all the costs associated with adding homes in the town. It is a well-recognized fact documented in many towns that as housing density increases, the overall long-term costs of the additions are not fully covered by property taxes, thus taxes need to go up. Arbor Haven has shown an estimated cost per student to imply that their development is financially net positive. This is likely to be wrong. When you include additional costs to town services, road work, sewer, police, fire, administration activity, etc., along with the cost per student, the total cost, based on the experience of other towns in Connecticut, will rise faster than the taxes. Thus, the development will be a loss for the town, not a gain. There are other uses for the country club property that would not be a net loss to the town. Open space is one such use. I request that Arbor Haven, in coordination with the town, conduct a more detailed financial analysis with a 10-year projection to assess total cost to town before any decision is made. Not okay. Next question. This is from Kathleen Mills. I am strongly against the. Give me a second here. I am strongly against the Arbor Haven development proposal by reason of the following concerns and of several questions for the developers. We live just north of the WCC property on Johnson Road with a drainage ditch that runs through our property and flows down through the WCC property. In the past 5 years, this ditch has flooded severely 3 times due to the increased rainfalls our area is receiving, and ponds on the WCC property now flow regularly. The proposal will result in many acres of newly paved asphalt and developed areas, leaving millions of gallons of rainwater unable to be naturally absorbed instead destructively flow into the already saturated neighborhood. How will this proposal protect my property and Woodbridge taxpayers from the catastrophic storm runoff that is only getting worse for all residents, suppressing all our property values? Additionally, I have personally called 911 several times about bad traffic accidents at Ansonia and Johnson Road. Like many families, my family walks the WCC and crosses this terrible intersection regularly. What impact will the hundreds of extra cars and journeys per day have on this treacherous intersection and on pedestrian walker safety, especially given that the plans for a playground at this busy intersection? How will the development protect vulnerable children crossing this state highway to play? The Reverend Dr. Kathleen Miller.
We wouldn't anticipate kids would be crossing a highway. We would hope that they'd be dropped off at the playground, but that's for parents to decide. With respect to the playground area, certainly it's not going to let kids run off the playground onto a roadway. That's it's just common sense. There was comments, but was there another question in there somewhere?
Question about essentially will the storm drains and the permeable be effective? And the answer is we believe so, and further information will follow. That is a very big part of our plan to reduce the runoff to the ponds and the drainage ditch.
Right.
We are considering that.
Yeah, we addressed the issue of permeable roadways and permeable bike paths. Because the ground will absorb the water if you let it.
Yes, storm drains work if you use them right.
Yep.
Someone positive. Hi, I'm liking what I see with the proposal by the Arbor folks. My one question, maybe this is more a Woodbridge question than Arbor, is whether all the recreational facilities, including pools and paths, will be low or no cost to the town resident. Given the tax payments, ultimate cost savings to the town, this would be a preferred arrangement. Mike Burns, 44 Mission Road.
I think we've already addressed the issue of all of the public amenities that we construct are deeded back to the town and become the town's responsibility.
But we'll just design them in such a way that we will hopefully reduce operating costs as much as possible. Just hand over some. What is the current? This is from Nancy Clark. What is the current cost of carrying the property to the Woodbridge residents? Is it still only about 40 to 50 per capita per year? That seems like a very small amount of money to be able to enjoy this beautiful piece of property so important to the wildlife in the area. Tony spoke to that earlier. It is $45 per capita. And I believe I've hit all the questions at this point. Beth, over to you. Back to you, I believe.
Thank you. That's all I have as well. Is it a time for, how are we doing for questions, Betsy? Maybe we should, if there's no new people, maybe we should have Dr. Budd speak. Or
Just had one additional question come in from Brian Pines. And he writes, as president of the Woodbridge Land Trust, I am encouraged by the overwhelming support by the residents of Woodbridge to protect and conserve one of the most valuable open space properties in our town. We maintain most of the hiking trails and have found that even 25-foot easements are wide enough. And that's it.
Okay.
If I may, I think Jenny Krause just had another question I'd like to address. You answered my question about the bike paths differently. You said they'd be open to the public, and you said they would be private. Which is it? They will be open to the public. The plan is to make this to be someplace which residents can continue to, residents and non-residents can continue to join. The bike paths would be on an easement that would be. Joe, can you actually speak to that? You understand that better than I.
Yes, the answer to the question is the bike paths sit on private property, but there is an easement against the homeowner which says that the public has access to the bike path and can use it. So a public bike path on private property.
It's essentially a combination of the two, but it maintains that everyone has access to it. And yes.
How are we doing, Betsy? That's it?
There are no additional questions.
Okay, so perhaps we could ask Dr. Budd now to take the mic, take the floor.
Hi, everyone. It's good to see you all tonight, or hear at least from you. And I was given two general questions ahead of time to be able to answer. And so I'm going to do that. And having heard the entire meeting, I think that my comments to both of these questions will address the issues that have come up in relation to Beecher. I would say the issues would be similar at the Amity Middle and High School level, although maybe in details a little different. Just so you know what the two questions are, my first question was, if additional children must be educated in our school system, what is the cost per additional child? And I'll answer that in a moment. But just so you know, the second question is, will the existing space at Beecher Road School accommodate additional students? So let me first answer about the cost per child. This is to some extent complex, and I'll start by saying our average per pupil cost for a student to attend Beecher is approximately $18,700, and that figure is derived by taking the total education budget pre-K to grade 6 and dividing it by the number of students enrolled. Now, as has been said, if we account for state and federal funding to the district, which is never guaranteed, we could say approximately 17,500 to 18,000 per child. But the reason this is complex is an average number can be misleading, particularly for a small district like Woodbridge. Just a little background on that. Any additional school-age child whose family resides in Woodbridge is required by state law to be educated at Beecher if the child's family wishes them to be, at any point during the year when the family moves to Woodbridge. Now, sometimes an additional child can move to Woodbridge and be very easily accommodated in the school without any additional cost to the budget. For example, if that child can be accommodated in an existing classroom and on an existing bus route and doesn't require any special services of any kind. However, approximately 11% of students require some type of special services required by law. And those services can require additional specialized personnel who cost even much more than the average. And further, the district, as I think most people know, is required by law to provide bus transportation to all students. And the more students are added to the system, the more statistically likely that additional classroom teachers, additional specialized services, and or additional bus transportation will be required. And so in some cases, the cost per student can well exceed the average. And then for the second question about the space at Beecher Road School, the first way I will answer is a phrase that I used at the recent Board of Education meeting. We are using every existing nook and cranny to educate each student currently at Beecher, and that includes this year repurposing rooms such as the Commons and the Rotunda that were originally designed for special assemblies and large group functions. Now, some incremental number of additional students, depending on the particular grade, can be accommodated in existing classrooms, but there's a boundary to that. Our current enrollment is approximately 830 students. And roughly, once we exceed approximately 850 students, the existing capacity of our building would be stretched in ways that would negatively impact education. For example, converting our existing art and music classrooms to general classrooms is possible. but would negatively impact our delivery of arts instruction to our children and would not be a recommendation I would support. I want to say for the record that the Board of Education has recognized needs in this area. They've recently formed an ad hoc capital plan committee to include town and community representation. And that committee, among other things, will be examining space needs at Beecher and needs and recommendations for facilities improvement and potentially facilities expansion if more than 850 students were to come to Beecher. Those are my answers that I prepared in advance, but certainly, Beth, if you'd like me to speak to anything else, you just let me know, or would like me to expand on any of that.
Sure, I think that's very helpful this evening, and you answered a lot of the questions. It's getting late. If there's no more questions, Betsy, we will continue and have more of these available. Are there any more people waiting, Betsy?
No, there are not.
Okay, so I want to thank Arbor Haven for joining us this evening. We will keep the public informed of anything further. And stay tuned to the Board of Selectmen. Alex, do you have anything you want to say or add? Anyone else from Arbor Haven? I thank you very much for taking time with our Woodbridge residents this evening.
Thank you so much for your time.
And thank you to all the residents who came and asked questions this evening. Thank you. Good night, everyone.